Serious, what was a normal part of your life growing up that other people were shocked by? Grew up with 7 siblings, 5 brothers and 2 girls. Between the brothers we had just 4 pairs of shoes, which meant that at least 2 of us had to stay at home. Went to school barefoot for almost a week before they called child services. Child neglect. My house was filthy, and I mean really filthy. Black mold covering the 2 different corners of a finished basement. Trash all over the floors. Never clean clothes because the washer and dryer were broken. Dinner once or twice a week with no food in the house. Whenever I'd go over a friend's house I'd notice, wow, it's so clean in here. Everything smells so nice. Look at all those snacks in the cupboard. That was my mother's house. Thank God she lost custody and I am now with my outstanding dad. Poverty. I grew up in a gross place. My single father was a drunk and left the apartment a mess. The couch was covered in rips with stuffing coming out. Stains all over the floors. Flies. Crap everywhere. My best friend of almost 30 years was telling me a while back that when he first came over he was amazed at how poor we were, as he thought he was the poorest kid in town. I explained that a lot of it had to do with my dad just leaving it in a bad state and being too drunk to clean or to teach me or my brother to clean. But his mom did work and she kept their apartment clean. We had a good laugh on that. Luckily, my wife is clean, as were past girlfriends. These wonderful women taught me, along the way, how to maintain a clean home, to wash the shower once a week, to change sheets. I'm not a rich man, but I 100% feel live comfortably, in the literal sense. It's nice to come home to a clean one. I love that you referred to the ex-girlfriends and wife as wonderful women. Just thought that was sweet and wholesome. One time I made a new friend from middle school and invited him over. We just had a normal evening of pizza and video games and watching crappy early internet flash movies. My parents would check up on us, but just let us be and watch TV in the living room by themselves quietly. As the evening went on, he got kinda weird and withdrawn and then took me aside to ask if me and my family were a bunch of frickin' Bible thumpers, to which I incredulously replied no to. He basically explained that the lack of skin flicks lying around, loud arguments, strange people coming over, and holes punched in the walls was extremely off-putting to him. To him, that sort of constant instability and chaos was completely normal and something that regular average people did, and my quiet boring home life was a total outlier. It was kinda hard for us to be friends after that and we drifted apart really fast. I hope he's doing alright. Kneeling on rice as a punishment for just about anything. Mum would throw a few handfuls of rice in a corner and you had to kneel on it for 20 minutes to an hour. Hands behind your back. And don't you dare try to lean on that wall or you'd get smacked in the back of the head and into the wall and your time would start over. Afterwards you'd have to clean it up, including any blood from broken skin, and then often you'd have to help make dinner or do whatever chore as if nothing happened. Yeah, this was a common one for me and my friends too, having grown up in an area with a lot of Asian Americans. I remember reading The Secret Life of Bees in high school and the main character was punished by kneeling on a pile of grits and relating so hard to it, and when sharing that with the class I was looked at really strangely by anyone who wasn't Asian. Whenever my friends would come over, I would tell them about the rules you had to follow when talking to my dad. This would include, agree with everything he says, don't speak unless asked a question, always try and answer, don't say I don't know, don't cry when he has a go at you, etc. Took a few friends meeting my dad then refusing to come round again, being picked up early because they were upset, to realize that most kids don't live in constant fear of a parent, and don't have a set rules in order to keep said parent calm and happy. Never being able to tell your parents the truth about where you are going. I remember the first time I realized it was weird when at a friend's house. We were leaving and all she said was we'll be back later and her mom said have fun. I was shook. No interrogation and her mom seemed to trust her. It was wild. I hated being interrogated by my mom whenever I left the house. Going off to college and not having that was basically bliss. I always felt just living with her was a full-time job and how much easier my life would have been not having to deal with her. Even just calling her as an adult I can feel myself getting anxious prior to calling. I never once saw my parents fight or yell. I can only recall one time that they were even sort of huffy with each other. Lucky you, you know how uncomfortable it is when parents argue yell each other in front of you. This is fairly mild. My dad extensively renovated our house. He made every bench top, door frame, window, shelf, desk, sink, shower, cupboard or drawer at a comfortable height for us. Our ceilings were 9 feet. My family is well over 6 feet, with my dad topping out at 6 feet 6. When people first came to my house they were shocked by the height of everything. We had little stools in the bathroom for short guests. We even had to get step stools in the children's room because our normal height friends had issues getting on the couch when my siblings and I were younger. My house was the stuff of legend on the yard. We even had a giant dog which to us was normal sized. I have never been as comfortable in a house as I was in my childhood home. That's awesome and hilarious at the same time. Not knowing who my father was, I went to a Catholic school, so it was pretty weird to not have a nuclear family when I was younger. It's not so much of a big deal nowadays, but it still makes people pause when I tell them I've never met my dad. As an Asian kid I grew up being disciplined physically. Got the belt, the hand, the slipper, wooden spoon, you name it. This had happened to me so much as a kid I literally thought this was normal and that all families did this. I remember being in 8th grade and having a conversation with my friends and we were talking about our parents and I nonchalantly was like, oh yeah, my mom hits me all the time. She always slaps me in the face. I'm used to it because I genuinely and truly thought this was normal. I didn't realize how fricked up it was until my teacher brought me into the hallway to ask if my home life was okay and explained to me his duty to report thing. He asked if I wanted him to call. Obviously I said no. But I remember going forward this teacher used to walk on eggshells when it came to giving me bad comments or speaking with my parents during parent-teacher interviews because he didn't want me to get in trouble. My parents spanked me on the soles of my feet so that the bruising pain from walking would be a reminder to not freak up again. I grew up in this rickety old farmhouse in the middle of Minnesota. It was really cold a lot of the year, and our upstairs didn't have insulation, so we didn't have any heat upstairs. We'd sleep with an electric blanket and loads of other blankets heaped on top. When I woke up in the mornings, there would sometimes be frost on my walls because it was so cold and the windows didn't keep the cold out very well. It would also sometimes get to -50 degrees Fahrenheit and then school would automatically be cancelled because kids couldn't wait outside at the bus stop. And sometimes mom would take us outside to blow bubbles on really cold days. The bubbles would freeze in midair and fall to the ground and shatter. My friend's boyfriend were all shocked by this stuff. Doesn't get anywhere near as cold where we live now. I remember one winter my dad got laid off earlier than normal for the winter, and things got pretty rough. We had a furnace but not enough for oil. We put a wood burner in the attached garage and lived in there the whole winter, eating hot dogs for dinner 5-6 times a week. I don't eat many hot dogs anymore. The amount of trips to the liquor store. When I was young, nearly every time I got in the car with my mom or dad, the story was the same. We're going to stop at the liquor store then home. Sometimes when I'd switch parents, they are divorced, I'd stop at the liquor store twice. Once each way. One day I was at a sleepover at a friend's house whose parents weren't extreme alcoholics. We ran errands on 3 or 4 separate times and didn't stop at the liquor store. 8-year-old me was so confused. On the final trip I poked my head up between the front seats and trying to be helpful and remind them said, aren't we going to stop at the liquor store? And the parents looked at me like I had 2 heads. No, I was so confused I just got out of the van and went inside. I feel this one. My family made daily trips to the liquor store and the convenience store for cigarettes. A car hot boxed with cigarette smoke was my normal. That my personal pet was a bear. Up in Alaska I hand-fed a black bear sandwiches as I got off the bus. Eventually he got bold and started coming to our porch. I fed him some salmon and he never left. That was until a female black bear came onto our property and he left with her. Apparently black bear cubs will get kicked out of the nest. So we basically took him in, he was malnourished, and then he went off to start a family. I grew up ultra-orthodox Jewish, so a lot of stuff. No TV, no internet, no video games, speaking Yiddish at home, laying motionless on the Sabbath, pretty much forbidden to do anything, etc. I had a similar situation. We did have TV and internet, but just all the holidays. kosher laws, weekends being all about Shabbos, wearing kippahs, and so on being a normal part of life until I went to college. Holy crap, what a culture shock it was, especially the fact that you can get stuff done on the weekends. Traveling. My parents were divorced and my dad would fly my sister and I to wherever he was working once roughly every 2 years. Sure, it was cool to travel and go to Dubai, Egypt and Vietnam before I was 15, but I only got to see my dad for 2 weeks every 2 years. I just wanted to see my dad, man. I wasn't allowed outside of my bedroom. No radio, TV, friends or phone. I had an evil stepmother who hated me since I was 5. They finally kicked me out when I was 15. I still don't have good social skills and am afraid to upset people. I'm so sorry that happened. Entirely different cause, but I'm still learning how to upset people when necessary and be okay with it. Small steps, but I'm slowly learning that healthy people may get upset, but usually then respect whatever boundary you've put in place. My parents never took my siblings and I to the doctor or dentist unless bone was showing or you were on death's door. I always assumed it was because we couldn't afford it, but it wasn't until I was much older and in therapy I realized it was actually because my parents were controlling. Both of them worked in the medical field, but they weren't doctors, so they thought they knew better than everyone else. If we did get sick, I had chronic sinus infections as a child because I had terrible allergies, none of which they addressed. My dad would call his colleague's wife, who was a doctor, explain my symptoms and she would prescribe antibiotics. My dad also forged my annual immunization forms for high school 1 year because he didn't want to take me. The dentist he used to take us to was his friend and would give him a discount, but I'd have to endure this man's sexist bulls if I wanted my teeth cleaned. The last time I ever went to him, he told me as he's giving me a filling I should really get a nose job, I'd be so much prettier. My dad scolded me in the car after, thinking I had brought it up. It wasn't until I went to the doctor and gyn for the first time in college. I had no freaking valuable piece of my medical history other than accidents I had as a kid. It was like I was starting new at age 20. I now go regularly to the doctor. Somewhat related. My parents dated for 12 days before getting engaged. 2 months after that they were married. Their 20th is in December. Whenever I tell people this, their mind kinda stops working for a minute. My parents' first date was 4th of July and they were married the 12th of October. They'll be married 45 years next month. My stepmother beating the absolute crap out of me for very little reason, or sometimes no reason at all, on a pretty regular basis. The total lack of love. My brother and sister have always had a good relationship with my parents, but for reasons I don't understand my parents wished I didn't exist. I was an inconvenience at best. I once broke my ribs falling out of a tree. They made me wait 3 days until they had spare time to take me to hospital. Beatings were frequent. Beatings for any perceived mistake. Beatings for being bullied at school. The beatings I was told were to toughen me up. Beatings for crying while being beaten. I eventually figured out that the beatings, name calling and abuse all came from the same root cause, using up my parents' time and effort when they could have been spending it with my siblings or each other. So I tried to become invisible. I learned to move around the house silently, which floorboards squeaked, how to open and close doors without sound, how to control my breathing to be absolutely quiet. I set up a chair and books in my closet so I could be in there unseen for hours. It was only when I left home that I found out other children enjoyed spending time with their parents, that they talked to them, had fun with them and were supported and cared for by them. I can't imagine how good that must feel. Even to have memories of cuddling on a sofa with a parent or going to the park must be amazing. I had a similar situation. I'm 40 and have 2 kids, and being able to be the parent I wish I had has been so healing for me. I don't know if it counts, but both my parents basically refused to leave the 90s. They act like teens, which I guess is cool. My dad is a total metalhead and my mom grunge. Our house basically looks like an old garage that a doomed band would use. Our apartment is filled with old Polaroids, instruments, band posters, anything motorcycle related and cats. And music is always playing on the radio or pickup. I don't have a problem. I like it. But when my friends come they say that they feel like they enter a different time period. I've never had my own room. I grew up in one room apartment with mum, dad, elder brother, a dog and a cat. We never had much space there, but a lot of furniture that was really necessary. People didn't understand why I never invite friends to my home. That jealousy when somebody complains about parents entering their room without knocking. OHH, it's good to know I'm not the only one. I didn't know I was in a very religious family until I found out how abnormal it was in college. Like my family and I never missed Sunday mass. We used to celebrate every first Friday of the month by dressing up nicely to go to a Latin mass, which was like the original language said in the first Catholic masses. We prayed the rosary a lot, and during the Lenten season we would go around churches to offer more rosaries and prayers. Plus our family has like 4 priests and 5 nuns. Now that I'm older though, a lot of the stuff we used to do happens less often, although I still haven't missed Sunday mass. My dude, I'm here with you on that one. Dad's a Latin mass kind of guy, but mum's just regular, so we went to the local Catholic school. I didn't understand why none of the other 7-year were able to rattle off all the prayers in English and Latin. Oh, and let's not forget trying to prove to the teachers that I really am allowed to take communion even though I'm not in grade 4. My divorced parents agreed to never badmouth each other around the kids and always pretended to get along when we were around. They are still friends now. I don't understand the whole nasty divorce thing so many kids have to deal with. I never took a vacation or seasonal trip with family as a kid. We just never had the money for it. When I tell people this, they are appalled that I've never been to Disneyland, beautiful islands or foreign countries in my youthful summers. Guess a lot of people I know can't fathom the idea that some families are poor. That and I've moved around a lot. Went to like 4 or 5 elementary schools and 3 middle schools. Just trying to find the next cheapest place to live. Same. My family never went go on vacations, and although I would be jealous of all these trips that classmates went on, I understood that we couldn't afford to. It still surprises me that others can't get their head wrapped around it though. My parents never gave gifts on time, and rarely kept them a secret. There was no waiting excitedly or patiently for Christmas morning in my house. If the gifts came early, Christmas could be the 16th of December, or if they came late, it could be the 20th of January. When I was younger, my parents usually didn't have enough money saved up in time to buy the presents, and honestly my mom had poor planning on when she should buy them for shipping to make it in time. It never bothered me and my brother because it was a Russian roulette of what day Christmas would come, which I think is more fun. Now that my parents have more money, we don't give gifts on time anyway out of habit. Sometimes I'll get an expensive gift in April and be told it's my late Christmas or early birthday gift. My birthday is in September. How unstable everything was. I didn't have many friends, but the few that got close saw how bad it was for a while. They were very privy to my family's dirty laundry. I low-key grew up in a cult. It wasn't ridiculously intense. No terrible brainwashing or abuse, but the seclusion made for a bizarre childhood. I went to an elementary school in the basement of our church. At the largest, there were 15 students. The smallest I remember it being was 5. We were there for the weekend school, then back again on the Sabbath, Saturday, for service. I didn't have any friends outside of the church, and inside the church it was only my classmates that were even close. It made for a real crap 8th grade when my school shut down and I was moved to public school. For the last year of middle school, the church had a lot of weird rules about things. They believed that the Sabbath started late on Friday and went until midnight Saturday, and therefore we couldn't go to school or work on Friday. I thought Friday was part of the weekend until I was 9. They followed a flexitarian diet. Fish and poultry as the only animals we could eat. Anything with the cloven hoof or crawled along the ocean floor was dirty and forbidden. To this day I haven't eaten any red meat. I never really developed a taste for it, and it's fun to pull out. Never ever have I ever eaten bacon at parties. No dancing, no singing, no fun. I didn't have any knowledge of pop culture or even music that wasn't choir or piano. You wouldn't really know it to meet me now. I'm fairly well adjusted, decently functional human considering the isolated mess I started as, which is nice. That their mums were proud of them. I remember I once got 35/40 on a test, then we had to retake it. I got 36/40. My mum didn't look pleased. She told that I should have got 40/40. Nothing I ever did could satisfy her. She kept comparing me to others. I once told my friends my issues, and I know she read them because now she's proud of me. She also stopped comparing me to my cousin and said that she's glad I'm her daughter. Or, yay for mum realizing her mistakes and stepping up. When I was a kid I lived on a traveller site. That is a caravan park for gypsy and or Irish travelers. But I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to be normal. The teachers put me into the special class automatically with all the slow or deaf kids. I think people didn't expect me to be intelligent or enjoy reading and drawing. I'm a professional now and people are shocked I came from that background. Someone said I looked like a pikey the other day, lol. Good to see you are doing well. I always thought that those Christmas scenes of families playing games, having fun and going out for a post-dinner walk was made up. Surely no family actually does that, or is that happy at Christmas? Apparently, having lots of family arguments, awkwardly sitting around in silence, being told you look really fat, and just generally saying horrible things to each other is not the norm at Christmas. When my friends told me how much they love Christmas and playing all these fun games in which all family members happily participate in, I was so confused. Same thing in our house growing up. I know it was a coping mechanism now, but we would try to laugh it off and say stuff like it's not a family holiday until dad made all of us cry. I hated holidays growing up. Being able to solder and repair my toys and basic electronics by age 7. Dad has always been a tinkerer and tech geek, and insisted I could do it with proper care because kids aren't stupid, despite my mom being dead worried. Turns out he was pretty much right. Even nowadays, I sometimes forget most people don't have a soldering kit at home to do that easy fix on their TVs or phones. And not being afraid of small burns is a nice superpower. This is actually really cool. Death and illness. My dad died from multiple organ failure. Liver and kidneys gave in due to alcohol. This was a couple of years ago. My grandma was also sick around the same time with a cancerous brain tumor. She died last year. At the same time as my dad and grandma, my granddad was having heart issues and his dementia was getting worse. He then died earlier this year. Hugs to you. My grandmother died of brain cancer. She and my grandpa were living with us because the treatments were too difficult to get to from their house. It was majorly traumatizing watching my formerly vibrant, funny, loving grandmother become a shell of herself, then eventually go into the hospital never to come out again. People who didn't grow up around this crap don't get it. Screaming. Constantly. For the slightest thing I would get yelled at. I thought I was lucky because everyone kept saying your mom's so nice. And so I was just like, okay. Until a friend came round and we got home before her. I think she forgot he was coming. And she went off on my brother for not having much milk left. And screamed for an hour before slamming the front door and driving off for a few hours. That's when my mates were like, hey, that's not normal. I think 12 at the time. My brother was 15. Not eating 3 full meals every day. I've been used to not eating much since I was 4. I usually don't eat breakfast. I eat a very small sandwich or something for lunch, and something small for dinner, then like a small bag of chips for dessert. I've always thought it was normal, but people that come to my apartment have always been shocked by the lack of food in my apartment. People have thought that I have an eating disorder, but it's not. I grew up living off of a minimum wage salary, and to save money, my parents spent the bare minimum on food so they could afford rent and crap for my schooling. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.